We got breaking news out of the NFL this morning with Miami Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill slated for season-ending surgery on that left knee later today. Hill suffered a dislocated knee in last night's win over the Jets, but also tore several ligaments in that knee as well, including his ACL. He spent last night in a Miami hospital for further evaluation of that injury. It closes the book on Hill's fourth season in Miami, where he had 21 catches this year for 265 yards and 1 touchdown. But take a look at the numbers in terms of what he's done since taking his talents there to South Beach. In 2022, when he made his debut from Kansas City, he was that deep threat they needed. You see the receiving yards just over $106 there. And then you talk about those 30-plus yard receptions, had 23 in 2022 and 23, but a little dip in 24-25, of course, dealing with Tua missing in action with injuries, and then also that offense just taking a little sputter. But now that fourth season comes to a close with Hill heading for season-ending surgery. All right, for more on that, I want to bring in lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones. And, of course, JJ, we saw the injury all last night and this morning, season-ending surgery on that same knee. What more can you tell us about him?
A devastating knee injury for Tyreek Hill. Obviously, we all saw the injury, and it was immediately understood that he would be out for the remainder of the season. When he goes to the hospital and tests are run, you're hoping against hope that there's no other ligament damage. You almost certainly know it is an ACL, but you hope it's not others, right? And then, of course, the biggest hope is that there's not nerve damage or issues with blood flow. And so almost immediately, just based off the mechanism of the injury, you understand that there will be at least one surgery on the knee, if not two, and hopefully not another. And so because of that, you know that he is out for the remainder of the 2025 season. When you consider his age, he would be 32 next season. When you consider how crucial speed is to his entire game, and then when you consider the months that it will take to properly recover between all of these surgeries, the 2026 season, the beginning of that at the very least, is absolutely in question for Tyreek Hill. So certainly done for this year. We'll see as he progresses throughout the beginning of the 2026 calendar year into the summer, if he could possibly go at some point next year. But as devastating a knee injury really as you see in the NFL.
When you talk about it, JJ, when you talk about Tyreek Hill, devastating is a big word, because you think about it, this is a guy who's built off of speed. He's not 6'5", he's not a big receiver, he's not a big body. He lives and dies off his speed. The reason why you see him 60 yards down the field, the reason why he has 2 rings with Kansas City, and the reason why he's in Miami to be that threat. How big of a blow is this for him in terms of what he brings to the field?
It's huge, right? And it's huge, and you don't, before he even goes under the knife, you don't want to speculate about the long-term ramifications, right? But this upcoming year was going to be the final year of his contract with the Miami Dolphins. Last year, it was his worst season of his career. It looked like, even though the Dolphins were struggling on the field through the first 3 weeks of the season, it looked like he was kind of getting back into form. And so now what you have is so much uncertainty. He has a cap number next year of $51 million. That was always going to get reworked. His job security for the Dolphins, very likely untouched for next year. You can't cut a player who is injured, who can't pass a physical. He's due a $5 million roster bonus a couple days into the league year. About $11 million of his contract is going to trigger a couple days into the league year. And so the Dolphins are always going to look to rework it simply to get the cap number down, even if he had a standout year. We see right there where he ranks among highest paid wide receivers. A couple years ago when he got that extension, $90 million, it was the most in guaranteed money for a wide receiver, especially of his age at that stage in his career. And so what he has been able to do and bring to whatever team he has been on has been nothing short of remarkable. I know he has 5 first-team All-Pros to his name, 1 as a returner. So you have 4 first-team All-Pros as a wide receiver. Very few people can say that in such a short amount of time in his career. But certainly you worry if he will ever get back to what he was, because of just how bad this injury is.
You mentioned, of course, he will be 32, so the future is still a little murky in terms of that. But for the Dolphins, I mean, I guess the silver lining in this, they did win their first game. But now if you're Mike McDaniel, you have to find production elsewhere. We saw Darren Waller last night. Jalen Waddle is also on the roster. Other receivers, Malik Washington there. If you're the Dolphins and you want to continue and maybe stack more W's or at least get this offense moving, where do they look now for production?
Certainly with Jalen Waddle, right, there's no doubt that he becomes the #1 wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. You are heartened and encouraged by what you saw from Darren Waller. They've been trying to get him ramped up. I think he probably exceeded expectations last night. And so you continue on that path, right? This is not a guy who's going to go out there and give you 65 offensive snaps next week on a shorter week, of course, for the Dolphins. But continue him on his path. You talked about Malik Washington. One name, of course, to look out for is Devon Achane, who is fantastic out of the backfield, catching passes. And so maybe he gets even more involved in the offense. Of course, where Mike McDaniel comes from, that San Francisco system, that Kyle Shanahan system, there's a plethora of guys who could ultimately come available via trade, who have spent time in San Francisco or Minnesota, who've been with the Miami Dolphins before. And so that would be something to look out for. Not a high draft pick. I don't at all mean that. But if someone is released, or you can send a late round pick swap for someone at wide receiver or running back, that would be a possibility. The Dolphins are 1-3. I know it looked bad through the first 2 weeks of the season, but they are 1-3. Right now, an AFC wildcard team is 2-2. And so while I do not believe that the division is ultimately going to be in their grasp, right, you have the Buffalo Bills, who are 4-0 and have a win over the Miami Dolphins. So over the last 13 games, the Miami Dolphins would need to be 3.5 games and wins better than the Buffalo Bills. I don't think anyone thinks that's going to happen, especially without Tyreek Hill. But there are winnable games on the Miami Dolphins schedule. They are still, a lot of folks like this defense and Anthony Weaver as defensive coordinator, and we see their schedule right there. They have a Panthers team reeling. Then it's a Chargers team, just lost to the New York Giants. Then it's the Browns, a beatable Falcons team. Who knows what the Ravens and their defense looks like by week 9. And of course, you have a big test against the Bills. So again, the sky was falling 2 weeks ago, 0-2. Today, they are without Tyreek Hill for the rest of the season. But you look at this schedule, you know they still have talent, still have resolve, fight, and will. The book is not closed on the Miami Dolphins in 2025.
We will see. Now, Tua has to find a new #1, maybe Jalen Waddle, as you mentioned. We'll see now moving ahead without no Tyreek Hill the rest of the season. Jonathan Jones, appreciate you on that breaking news when it comes to Tyreek Hill. Season-ending knee surgery scheduled for today. But take a look at it. Since 2016, the Cheetah has been everything you will want in a wide receiver 1. Take a look at it. Over 11,000 receiving yards. That's #1 in the league. And then receiving touchdowns, 83, top 3. And then I mentioned those receptions over 20 yards and plus, 165 of those. But now that is now heading to the shelf for the Miami Dolphins as they try to find another wide receiver 1 with his season over.